Rear Admiral Javed Iqbal Saab, Pakistan has moved quickly to secure alternative oil supply routes through the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's Yanbu port. From a strategic perspective, and I'd like your point of view on that, how important is such diversification when we are seeing whatever is happening in the Strait of Hormuz, and of course the question mark on how long this situation might continue or whether Hormuz could become more unstable?
Yes, very true. In Saudi Arabia, there is an east-west oil pipeline which carries the oil from inside the Persian Gulf towards the Red Sea, the Yanbu port. And also, in addition, there is also a smaller pipeline, which the UAE maintains, and it brings the oil out to the into the Gulf of Oman. But compare the volumes. Like I mentioned that through the Hormuz, 20 million barrels of oil per day is transferred through ships. But these two pipelines combined have a capacity of only 10 to 11%, not more than that. And considering the demand, there is likely to be supply contingency shocks, but availability will continue, albeit at a very, very limited frequency. And the storages also matter. The strategic crude oil reserves. Pakistan, as the OGRA today, has come up that Pakistan holds 28 days of reserves as far as petroleum and diesel is concerned, and for the LPG, they said that 12 days. But I think we should continue to build and maintain these kind of storages, because these storages help against such supply chain shock disruptions. I was mentioning to you earlier that South Korea and Japan have in excess of 200 and 250 days storages of the crude oil and petroleum products. And in this kind of scenario, this building such kind of infrastructure reserves is very, very important.
All right. On the one hand, we've got these reserves and the importance of storing as much as possible, and other countries have done more, and Pakistan and other developing countries are in more of a situation, a catch-22 situation. Let's put it that way. Let's hope the situation kind of comes to resolution before things move towards a very negative outcome. But as the Middle East, sir, becomes more militarized and alliances are shifting, as you are also seeing yourself, how should Pakistan and other regional states balance diplomacy, its security interests, and economic stability in such an unpredictable environment?
Yeah, it's a very tightrope walk. Pakistan, has very good relations with almost all the stakeholders around Gulf, including United States. And Pakistan has been, pleading its case and articulating its support to all its stakeholders very, very effectively. And we would have to balance our diplomatic relations, considering the sensitivities that are involved.
When you look at the sensitivities, this is another question. I mean, I just wanted your point of view on this. We've seen educational institutions being targeted by the US and Israel. It kind of reminds us of what happened in Palestine as well, the number of educational institutions and children and women that were killed. And here in as well, around 160 or 160 plus people have been killed by these strikes. The United Nations has also publicly come out against it, and so have other countries, including Pakistan. How do you see this scenario, or do you feel that the way educational institutions and children have been targeted, this is a scenario that might repeat itself in the coming days?
Oh, sure. As you must have watched the developments, starting from Russia-Ukraine war and then the current action against Venezuela, they say that the rules-based order is dead. And as students of international relations and history, we know that morality, doesn't find any space in statecraft, and it is the national interest which is supreme. And suddenly we have seen its naked manifestation in the ongoing episodes. The Gaza is a classic example in which, without regard to human dignity and human lives, widespread destruction has been made, and we have witnessed again in the Iran. And unless the conflict comes to a stop, I see that such kind of actions being repeated again. either by by design or by default or whatever, to build the pressure.
I'd also like to understand from your perspective as well, because you are following this scenario as we all are. What is the ultimate objective as far as this conflict or this recent attack by the US in Israel on Iran is concerned? Is it a regime change? Is there more to it? Are there other regional actors at play along with the US and Israel to change the whole regional dynamics? What is at play?
As it has been articulated by international commentators, who have a deep interest in such issues, the design of the greater Middle East and the greater Israel, occupying the Muslim territories seems to be behind that. And we've seen the relationships between Israel and USA, deepened to that extent in which the Trump, having targeted Iran a couple of months ago and having articulated that they have taken out the Iranian nuclear capability. Now coming back again and again means that there is more to it. There is a greater design behind it beyond Iran.
All right. If there's more to it, will we be seeing other such incursions or other such involvement of this nexus that we are seeing? In this case, it's the US-Israel, but we're also hearing of the whole timing of it all that involves other regional players as well. Are we seeing? You said the rules-based order has kind of is no longer present, but is there a new rules-based order in the making?
A very interesting question. Because you must see the big picture. It is the great power contestation which is going on, and in fact, the earlier designs were, to advance NATO and to confront Russia, but then somehow, the Russia, did not budge from its stance and did not vacate the occupied territories, and suddenly we see the theater of war now shifting first to Venezuela and now to the Middle East. Basically, it is the building stages of the great power contestation, and we must carefully watch, Russia's and the China's stance into that, which is currently limited to the diplomatic support and very strong diplomatic support for all parties to, come to peace and end the active combat. But I think this will trigger a great strategic shift into the world, especially in the context of the great power contestation.
Are we seeing a future that is unipolar, bipolar, or multipolar?
Of course, multipolar, because after the end of the Cold War, it was famously said that it is the end of the history, and the poor Francis Fukuyama, was bashed for it. But now the realization has come in, and the United States has also acknowledged that China, is far more than only a peer competitor. An accommodation of China's rising status or risen status has come in, and I think that kind of showmanship is taking place, in which a mutual accommodation of interests or mutual respect for the power, all these actions are being primed to that end, I believe.
All right, all right. Thank you very much, Rear Admiral Javed Iqbal Saab, President of NEMA, to have joined us. Stay with us for a few more minutes while I end this, begin the second segment and of course end the show. But thank you so very much to have stayed with us and to have answered so many questions that were of extreme interest, not only to myself as a student of journalism, but also to all our viewers. Let's now take you to South Asia.